right, welcome back once again to another roundtable. It's been a really long time since we did a roundtable discussion, and tonight's going to be a good one. We had a lot more guests this season because we had a lot of two people coming on at the same time, and then there could have been up to like 6 or 7 people here, but I think it's good that honestly that we only got 4 because it gets a little crazy. It gets a little hectic when you got 6, 7 people in a discussion, and it gets repetitive too. So we are here this evening with Amy and Jesse Koll and maybe the greatest podcast host of all time. Possibly, I mean, he's definitely one of the best I've ever heard. They call him, what do they call you? The British Empire. I believe that's what they call you over there. And yeah, just a god among men. Andy Mossom is here.
Hello.
Man, I feel like my introduction was really lackluster.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Wow, okay.
I was like,
I
I
know,
do
I
a
know.
podcast with you, Jesus Christ. Very nice to
No. If people don't know, that's just kind of so one of the things that Andy does on his podcast and that I always kind of like praise him for is his ridiculously complimentary guest intros. Like every time it's like the Thriller in Vanilla, the greatest of all time, you know. So I figured I'd give him that treatment tonight. Andy, deserving of that, my friend. So as I said, we're here to talk Secret Invasion. I don't even think I said that. Did I even say Secret Invasion? I don't think I said that yet. We're here to talk Secret Invasion. We've got a group of 5 of us here, and I think tonight we're going to do a character discussion more than anything. Instead of doing like an episode by episode discussion or going through specific scenes or events, we're just going to go through and talk about each character in the series and kind of their arc in the series. And I think we'll be able to cover it all really well that way. So I'd like to start off by getting everyone's opinions going in. When you first heard about Secret Invasion, when you saw the trailer, whatever, or before the series actually started and you were about to watch episode 1, you know, kind of what were your thoughts going into it? And we'll start with Amy. How are you feeling about Secret Invasion from the get-go?
I had no real thoughts or preconceived notions of it. I haven't read the comics that it's based on, that series, so I really didn't have any strong thoughts. I was looking forward to seeing Samuel L. Jackson sort of in the lead for a series, being a supporting character in so many other projects, but otherwise I didn't have any strong feelings. Just happy to see what it was going to be.
No expectations. Yeah. All right. Jesse Koll, were you pumped about it or what? How were you feeling going in?
Okay, so when they said Skrulls, other than you know, I let on that it was about the Skrulls, but other than like Captain Marvel, the Skrulls that I was familiar with are from like that. Do you remember that cartoon? It was
Earth's Mightiest Heroes.
The Avengers. Earth's Mightiest Heroes. That's the one. And that I remember watching that once at like 2 a.m. because I was super bored and I took way too much pre-workout and I couldn't sleep. So I didn't have a huge remembrance of the story, but I got the idea right. And but remember there was that TikTok reel I showed you where you type in this really long code and it pops up the Secret Invasion website. We went on there and we saw the little trailer and I was like, oh my God, like this is gonna be cool, man. It was really dramatic, you know, because I mean, it pops like one of those like 1980s screens and it's the green bleeping letters and you type it in this thing. I had to screen cap the reel to get it. I'm at work trying not to get caught by my boss, you know, and then I'm watching this trailer, you know, I plugged my Zoom meeting headphones in and I got kind of psyched for it. And I wasn't before that. So that their marketing on it was huge. I was like, all right, I'm in. You know, you gotta love Nick Fury. He's awesome. So, you know, we got and I think Talos. I just got done watching a show where that same actor, I can't remember his name right now. So I didn't even connect it till later, but I was like, I know this dude from somewhere. And I just got done watching The Outsider that Talos was also the lead in. So that was really, I was like, I know this guy, man. I didn't put two and two together until after the series was pretty much over. But yeah, so I was pretty pumped for it, actually. Not initially when I heard it was being released, but once we got into the trailers and the build up, and I know you were about to gear up for this show, so I was like, all right, here we go. You know, so yeah, I was pretty pumped about it. Like a couple weeks out, I got really psyched about it, but before that, I was just kind of like, we'll see what it's
about. Yeah. Ben Mendelsohn is his name, correct?
Yeah, no, he's awesome.
Yeah, he is. He's great. Andy, what were your thoughts leading up to the series?
I was pretty psyched for this. I knew it wasn't going to be the same as the comic book series that they did. I knew they were going for something completely different. But as Jesse said, the marketing for this was pretty insane because we had that website and the secret messages. Marvel streamed for like 24 hours prior to the premiere of the first episode as well. So they were going all out there for it. And yeah, I mean, rarely is there an MCU project that I'm not excited for, to be fair. There's not many out there that I've turned around and gone, I'm not that fussed about it, or I could give it some time. But yeah, I'm a big Nick Fury fan in the MCU. I was really looking forward to this, seeing more of the Skrulls, and knowing that the Super Skrulls are on the way as well. That was I was down for this for sure.
Yeah, and I gotta agree with you guys. Like, for the most part, I was excited because of the theme of this series. It's like a spy thriller. It's like espionage. It's like, you know, who's who. Like, you know, who's a Skrull. I was excited going in. I didn't know what to expect. I kind of assumed that they wouldn't go too far on like who was a Skrull and who wasn't, maybe this whole time. And I think I was right about that. You can't really pick a really like major character that had a lot of input previously, or you know, that their character arc made a big difference in what happened. I feel like you couldn't really make them a Skrull because you take a lot away from everything we've seen. So I feel like I got what I expected in regards to that. But yeah, going in, I was just excited to get back to some like MCU stuff. Like, I know we've had movies, and I feel like they've kind of been like kind of hit and miss. You know, I've enjoyed them all, but some were really good and some were like, you know, I'm not in a hurry to rewatch them. So it was nice though to get back to the series. We haven't had a series since like November of last year, October of last year. Been a really long time, and that's like I had to change the whole theme of this podcast because, you know, it was going to be just the series week to week, because they acted like it was going to be like every week we're getting something new, maybe a couple weeks in between each series, but other than that, they were going to keep pumping them out. But that did not happen. We did what, eight months or something without any series coming out, and so I was just pumped to get back in the swing of things and to have a series to watch week to week. I love that feeling. You know, it takes me back to my childhood of week to week expectations and like getting pumped and being left on a cliffhanger and having to wait a whole week to find out what happens. Like, I love that, and it creates a lot of discussion in the community too when they do that. You know, if you just throw everything out there in 1 week, you know, the discussion's over within a week. But if you do it like this, you got 6, 7, 8 weeks of discussion going on. So I was pumped going in.
Yeah, I know the last one that I really enjoyed was She-Hulk. So this one coming back, it gave you back that sense of urgency to want to watch it as soon as, you know, Wednesday night, let's go, you know. Or was it Thursday this week? Or this one? Anyway, you know, every week when it popped out, you're like, yep. Okay, got my show. This is like whatever old show I'm like re-binging. I'm like, we'll not watch that tonight. Let's go with the, you know, and my wife wasn't a fan, so it's like, I don't even care. Like, I'm having battles in the bedroom to watch it.
I think another thing that's great about the series is just like, it's, I don't know where I was going with that. I completely just lost my train of thought. So the series Oh, no, it creates that sense of urgency, especially if you're in the community and you're like in like groups and stuff that discuss it, because you don't want to have anything spoiled. So you're like, I gotta watch it as soon as possible. I can't be online for the first few hours of the day. I gotta watch this and then before I get online and see what happened, because people will start talking about it. You know, they don't care if you've seen it or not. It's like you should have seen it by now. It's 3 a.m. What are you a fan at all? So yeah. All right. Sounded like we were all feeling pretty good, or zero expectations going in. So that's good. We'll see in the end how we all felt about it. What I'd like to do now is kind of get into character discussions of each character in the series, or at least main characters in the series. And if I've left any out, feel free to bring up any characters you want to talk about, because that's the name of the game. Let's just however you want to talk about them in whatever order. But we'll start out with Nick Fury, and we'll start with Jesse. Kind of, what did you think about not only Nick Fury being the center of the show, but his story that played out on screen?
Well, obviously everybody loves Nick Fury. I mean, everybody loves Samuel L. Jackson. Like, how can you not? He's such a bold character, and
yeah.
He just talks that shit start to finish every scene. He's not gonna get told how it is ever. So you got like a real capable individual, somebody that's not superpowered, that has contended on superhero levels throughout the last since Iron Man, since the inception of the MCU. So, having him have a story arc that doesn't involve other superheroes is pretty huge. Yeah, I mean, you gotta love Nick Fury in general, and then watching him have like an interspecies relationship that you never knew nothing about, that was really, it threw me off. I was like, oh, and then watching him kind of test if it was like their soul, or he is attracted to the Skrull because she was emulating somebody that he'd be attracted to. That was a cool dynamic, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Andy, what do you think of Nick Fury, and also with what Jesse brought up, kind of what do you think of that relationship, that part of this story? Because I feel like the show could have happened even without having that husband-wife, the secret wife relationship. I feel like the series wouldn't have changed a whole lot, but they definitely added that in there. But what did you think about them doing that and Nick Fury's arc overall?
Yeah, it was certainly interesting for them to throw that in there. It kind of pays off in his line maybe in the Winter Soldier film, wasn't it? When he is talking to Steve Rogers in the apartment, and he's like, "Oh, my wife kicked me out." And he's like, "No one knows about my wife except my friends." So it's that whole thing of having a secret wife, a bit kind of like how Hawkeye had his secret wife that we found in Age of Ultron. So an interesting dynamic to throw in there, and gives him a bit of extra depth, and it sort of makes it, to me, it made you feel like you wanted to hurt a bit more about the fact that since the blip, he'd been on the space station, the Saber station, and he just left his wife down there after having already been blipped for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's supposed to add a bit more hurt, and maybe give the reasoning why his wife had then been working for Gravik in that situation. I don't have much sympathy for him in terms of the fact that he'd completely ignored her, and therefore it's not surprising that his wife had turned against him, maybe, or was planning to. But I did like the emotional moments it gives in you, where it sort of layers their relationship in the second half of the series once you meet her, and it gives some of the flashbacks to her, how they met after the events of their first Avengers film, and they sort of read those poems to each other, and then flashes forward, and they sort of both decide to shoot the wall. Rather than sort of kill each other. And then also we get the story about how she picked the house knowing that Nick would like it. So they layered that relationship in the second half of the series, which to me makes it really good, and gave them a good ending as well, right at the very end of the finale. In terms of Nick's like overall arc, I thought it started off really well, because you need to know what's happened to Nick. Where's he been? Why has he been on the station? Why has he become this broken man? And this is a man that, while for years has been at the top of the spy industry, so to speak, and he knows everything that's going on. He's got his fingers everywhere in every little pie. And we find out that's because of the Skrulls, really. So it takes away a little bit of that aura that maybe Nick Fury had, and the fact that he hasn't done this on his own. He's done it on the back of the Skrulls, and used them and mistreated them in a way to get himself to the top of the ladder. But he's doing it to defend Earth. And once Thanos came and the blip happened, and that broke Nick Fury, because he realized it hasn't really mattered what he's done. Someone can just turn up and just completely outdo him on every front. And that broke him. But it was good to see him go through the journey of realization that he's like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what's going on. I'm always going to be in, and I'm always going to be here to fight the battles that I need to, even if I'm a bit broken. So I liked the overall layering of his character through this. Great to see him in a lead role in the MCU, as opposed to just being an overall sort of leader that we see in bit parts. But yeah, I liked the way that they did his character overall, and hit some bits of the finale. I didn't like the fact that we didn't get to see him have his final sort of face off or conversation with Gravik. That was kind of stolen a little bit from us. But at the end of the day, yeah, I enjoyed his overall arc and the extra layers that they gave him as a character in this, and the rebuilding of the Nick Fury persona.
And Amy, what did you think about just this, kind of Nick Fury coming back and having to kind of prove his worth again, because he came back and everyone was questioning, is he the same guy? Does he still have it? And
yeah. Well, I think I said when we had our initial discussion after the first episode, I found the people saying, oh, he's washed up, he's too old. I found it a little heavy-handed, the way that they did it in the show. And as the show went on, I continued to find it a little bit heavy-handed, the way they would talk about him not being not being sort of in a position of power anymore, as well as the theme of basically not doing for the Skrulls what he said he was going to do, which was to, find them a new home. That was brought up sort of again and again, to the point where it was like, maybe this could have been done. Instead of people constantly saying it, maybe it could have been shown in a different way. And I think I agree with Andy that not having Fury have that final conversation with Gravik, where maybe that could have come to an end or come to a head, rather, was something that was lacking in sort of wrapping that up and Nick's journey in that portion. Yeah, I also found the stuff with the wife a little bit shallow. I would have liked to see a little bit more depth. I would have liked to know why he was on Saber for 3 years and just abandoned his wife.
Yeah.
I did recently rewatch The Winter Soldier, though, and that when he said that line, I thought that was hilarious. I was like, oh, little did we know. Yeah. And this is just a funny reflection, but when at the very end, when she turned back into a Skrull and they kissed, I was like, but the teeth, be very careful there. That doesn't seem healthy. I'm not, shaming interspecies relationships. But those teeth.
I am, bro.
They look very sharp.
Leave my dog alone.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that in terms of that relationship, like the Gravik and Fury thing never coming to a head and us actually seeing any kind of resolution to that. And it does kind of take away from it. Like when you build it up, like there's, for one, Gravik is like egging him on the entire series, and then like Nick Fury saying like, I've got to do this, it's got to be about me doing it, and then it's actually not him that does it. But yeah, he goes and stops Scrody, but he doesn't ever encounter Gravik again, and it's kind of weird. It's like they built that up like that was the showdown, and then they pulled the switcheroo and they had it be Gaia and Gravik, which I was expecting. Once they revealed her to have powers, I'm like, okay, well, they're gonna have to have them face off because Nick Fury is powerless, and they are both endowed with these powers. So clearly that's what. And then once they killed off Talos, it was like, oh, okay, that's what they're doing. And before I forget, though, I'd like to get your guys' opinions on like all the character deaths in this series and whether you think they were necessary or whether you thought they really hurt the MCU or this story at all. But we got Maria Hill's death in the first series. That turned so many people off. I've heard of a lot of people not finishing the series because of that episode. And then on top of that, then we get Talos after making him one of my favorite characters. They kill him off as well. but I guess you got to make room for new. If they're going to bring in Gaia as a character going forward, maybe get rid of the other main character scroll. So, Andy, like, how did you feel about all the deaths in this series? And like, did Gravik die too? Did they kill him in the end?
Yeah.
So a lot of death going on.
To me, it was actually kind of refreshing. It's something I've said quite a lot on my show, is that I don't like the fact that all the characters seem to always make it through everything. Very rarely does anyone die. And if they do die, it's this grand sacrifice, or they're like a martyr for the cause sort of thing. So Gaia's death, we knew that was going to be a bit of a fake out and she was going to come back. Talos, I was a bit shocked because I was waiting for it maybe not to quite be dead and him to maybe pull through. So that was a little bit of a shock that they did kill him off here. Maria Hill's death, to me, that was a really good one, because that wasn't a death that had a sacrifice to it or was a grand gesture of them sacrificing themselves. It was, she died thinking that Fury killed her and that he was betraying them. And to me, that's the kind of death that I like to see in these kind of things after a while. And it's a character that was a main character that people liked, but she wasn't necessarily overly important to the whole MCU. So to me, it was a good one to do that way. And it was the shock factor at the end of episode 1 that I think it needed as well.
I agree. I think people make a little too much of Maria Hill as an important character in the MCU. I think she's just a comfortable character for everyone, because everyone has known her from the beginning of the MCU and being a part of it, and to have her die, it's like, it's like you're losing this part of the MCU. But you're correct. Like, she's not like a person that you have to have in things in order for the story to go forward. Her dying didn't change anything going forward about the MCU. So I think I agree that if you're going to kill off a character, it makes sense to kill off one that's feels important but isn't actually detrimental to the MCU. But yeah, it just kind of sucked, right? It wasn't like you said, it wasn't a grand sacrifice. It wasn't this big moment. It was just man, that sucks. I liked her,
And they did forget about it pretty quickly. I mean, Fury gets ribbed in the next episode by her mum a little bit about the situation. And then after that, it's pretty much never mentioned again for the rest of the series. So,
yeah. Well, you keep killing people off like that. It's like, which death is the one you're going to worry about? It's like, okay, you kill her, and then you kill Talos, and then you kill. So,
shut up. Nobody cares.
Somebody doing some construction over there.
Hang on one.
That's all right, man. Don't worry about it.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Amy, how did you feel about Maria Hill's death, and then also just in general, them killing off characters in the series?
I mean, I definitely get the issue around, plot armor always being so thick that characters just don't die. I totally recognize that. I've seen that in other shows, like non-MCU shows, where people just never die. But I mean, Maria Hill got fridged. Her death was entirely Fury even says to her mother, she was killed because someone wanted to hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, as much as you're not wrong, she's not, a key character in the MCU. I'm not a big fan of her, being a plot device, her death being a plot device for that. I don't know. It seems a little like we've seen before in a negative way. But certainly there's a lot of plot armor happening for sure. Talos was quite shocking. And it's sad because he's such a fabulous actor. He seemed to really enjoy that role. I love that he's got an Australian accent and nobody else does. None of the other Skrulls have the same accent. He's just
right.
I'm going to do this accent. This is my accent. I'm going to roll with it. And then Gravik's death, which again, was there that wrapping up or that that apex of that storyline in terms of Fury's guilt and responsibility for the Skrulls? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
Agent Hill was the last of like the holdovers from like the Agent Coulson Shield kind of storyline, and
Mhm.
so it's like, oh man, it's like somebody threw away my teddy bear, and I mean, Agent Hill was awesome, but but like everybody stated, it's not detrimental to the ongoing plot of anything in the MCU. We hadn't seen her for really a long time actually prior to this, so it was a bummer. Talos, yeah, I was surprised they killed him. Honestly, I thought he's gonna be, coming back in future Captain Marvel kind of movies and stuff like that. So I was pretty surprised about that one.
I was hoping so. I was hoping to see more of him because, like, I don't know, I didn't realize how much I loved him till this series. Man, he's good. Like,
Mm.
just his
Yeah, and
delivery.
they developed the character so well too in this
Yeah,
series.
like he had depth, and they didn't even have to give him a whole lot to give him a lot of depth. Like, and I guess that's a testament to his acting, is what it is. Is like you really feel when this dude is talking, you like feel what he's saying, and with anyone else that might not have been as good. And Amy, you're right. I love how like all the scrolls have different accents. Well, it must just be like being here, right? Like we all have different accents. We're all from the same planet, but we have different accents, speak different languages. So I guess they would.
I almost found the relationship as depicted between Fury and Talos a little even more sort of intense and almost intimate than between Fury and his wife, which was an interesting choice that I really liked.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people, even in real life, even like you have a lot of times relationships with like your coworkers and the people that you spend the most time with, which is a lot of times not your significant other. You spend more time with your coworkers, or if you're in the military, you spend more time with other soldiers. Like I think it's a big part. It's like police officers with their partners. And they probably have a lot of times a tighter bond in certain ways than they do with their significant others at home, because they can understand each other. They have more, things in common that they can't, can't share in
Yeah,
the same way.
because they might be home. Like, because I mean, Fury and Captain Marvel helped Talos find his family, in space, and that was the original mission that he was introduced doing, right? And
Right.
so, and he was kind of, in Captain Marvel, he's kind of this like cheesy fake out villain, but then you see that in this iteration that he's more of like a general, exiled general to his people, and a lot of that on the hills of Nick Fury not being able to deliver on his promise. Well, he's probably exiling himself from his wife, Nick Fury is, because he's up trying to get this thing done because he feels like he owes it to Talos. So he's up here like, well, my concerns don't matter. I promised the scrolls I was gonna get this done. I'm gonna go try to make this happen. And he's up there trying to figure out a place for them to go. Well, he's not telling his wife that because there can be like she gets like kidnapped, someone wants to press her to find him. It's going to be way worse for her because he is a spy at the end of the day, and that's always been his thing. And something with like that I was going to say with Gravik, him not going head to head with him makes sense because he's more of a pull the strings person and set things up person. He's a planner and a spy, so I feel like that's probably why he didn't go to head to head with Gravik. Then it would have been like a non-superhero versus a superhero scroll. I feel like would have been a super uneven matchup. So they're giving Gia the powers made it kind of more like like it reminded me of when we watched like a Hulk versus Abomination in the Edward Norton Hulk. That's kind of the matchup that I was kind of seeing because they're popping out like the little Hulk powers, but every time that they hit each other is like a car accident type energy. So it's kind of like you got these big juggernaut strengths going at each other.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, in terms of, since we're mentioning deaths as well, the off-screen death of Talos' wife, Soren. that was surprising that one, they would kill it off screen, but two, I thought we would hear a little bit more of that throughout the series, or be shown what potentially had happened, or even her potentially them being lied to that she was still alive and being kept by Gravik and the rest. So to me, that was really surprising that a character that was going to be important to him and to Gaia was killed off screen, and it's never sort of even shown us what happened with that really in the end.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, okay. So did we? I'm trying to figure out, because we were talking about Fury. Did we cross over into Talos? Because we can if we haven't. We're just still talking about deaths, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're melting into each other.
I don't know. It's hard to keep me on any topic for more than about.
No, it's fine. No, I like it. I like it. I'm just like, wait a minute, did we already do Talos? Because if we move on to Talos, people are gonna be like, we just talked about Talos for
I think
20
you started
minutes.
it.
But I do feel like we talked about Talos quite a bit, and like the actor and the character, and how much we enjoyed him. Andy, did you feel the same way about Talos as I guess the rest of us have kind of?
Yeah, I loved him as a character. I loved him in the Captain Marvel film. It was great to get to see more of him. I know we got a glimpse of him in Far From Home, but yeah, it was good to see a lot more of him here. The dynamic, as Amy said, between him and Fury was intense, and it was personal. Like, I had it down that basically these guys have become best friends for the last 30 years. And you can sort of see that, and to the betrayal that each of them felt when the other had kept something from them. And I think the good example of that was when Fury finds out that a million Skrulls have come to the planet, and Talos invited them, and he wasn't told about this, and the betrayal of that to him was quite deep. And maybe we're thinking, well, why would you not think he would invite his exiled people to be where he is if they haven't got anywhere to go? But it just cut deep for Fury, and that just shows the bond that I think that they have. But I love Ben Mendelsohn. He's a great actor. His portrayal on the show was so good. I'm quite sad that Talos is dead, and we're not going to get to see him again in the future. I really wish they'd found a way to be able to keep him going. Obviously, they needed a bit more motivation for Gaia. But yeah, I think he was great in the show. Ben Mendelsohn did a really good job, and I'll definitely be sad if we're not going to see him again.
Yeah, I think there's one more thing about the death of Maria Hill and how it was just kind of forgotten so quickly. It's like, yeah, it was almost like it was a plot device, but then they didn't even follow through with that. So it was almost kind of completely useless because they never brought it up again. It didn't seem to be Nick Fury's motivation even. Like, they made it like, we're gonna make this Nick Fury's motivation, but then it really wasn't. It was still just about proving that he could still do it. He could, and it became about Gaia's revenge more than anything. So I don't know. That is kind of weak. That's kind of a weak plot devices. I feel like I don't like that so much. It's like it's just a revenge. It's like, it's fine when you go into just like your normal action movie or something, and you're like, okay, this is what we expect. It's like a revenge plot, and you got to go back and you got to get revenge, or you got to. But I don't know. That's one thing I like about the MCU is that it's usually a little bit deeper than that. Like there's usually, or I like it to be a little bit deeper than that. I don't want it to be like any run of the mill action movie. I want it to have some like character depth and like reasoning for stuff happening. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that. But so how are we feeling about Scrody? About Don Cheadle's character here, and it turning out, and we don't know 100%, but the rumor is, the word is that he's possibly been a Skrull since Civil War, so all the way through Endgame and everything.
Something you and I had brought up was like the impact of him coping with everything that's happened since Civil War is like Iron Man's dead. The snap happened, trying to explain that to him and him digest that in any kind of sensible manner. Like, any semblance of like reality that was his before that is like so blown out of proportion just for him on like a personal level, like insane.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I feel like me and you had touched on that on our show, and
Mhm.
yeah, that like when you actually brought that up, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that is really like I just kind of put myself in his shoes because before that it's just like you got Scrody, and then just for like a quick second it's him getting helped out, and there's not really any follow up on that. So whenever that comes to light, and they've been talking about doing Armor Wars forever, so I feel like that would be a huge point for that to jump off with. Is
Yeah.
Scrody or Rhodey adjusting to all this stuff and the PTSD and trauma from being in a scroll kind of trance for a decade or 5 years at least. So that's an interesting take. And then I think everybody saw that meme where or the thing online where the producer is saying that that is canon to the MCU, that he has been under scroll control since Civil War. And then I go back to that final scene with Stan Lee and Tony and Don Cheadle when he's doing the recovery. You know what I'm talking about? Where he's doing the recovery for his back, and I'm like,
Mr. Stank.
That scroll,
Tony Stank.
son of a bitch was already in there faking a broken back, son of a bitch.
Yeah. Amy, what did you think of him turning out to be a Skrull for so long? And also just Don Cheadle's portrayal of the character in this series specifically.
First of all, I didn't know Scrody was what we're calling him, and I love that. It does sound a little bit like scrotum, but we'll move past that.
I know.
I'm a fan of him being a Skrull. I like that aspect of it. I like how you see in the series him sort of moving farther and farther from Rhodey, and like as it comes down to the wire of his plan, where he's sort of starting to lose it. I'm not a big fan of him being a Skrull since Civil War. That feels like retconning a little bit. It feels like that's not something that they decided, when they made Civil War. They've just decided now that's what it was. And because if they were like, the MCU is so sprawling, but they're trying to do it intertwined and have all these things. And that's what they wanted to do. I would have hoped that they would have put some kind of clues, something that we can look back on once we got the reveal and said, oh, that's maybe that we should have realized, or I get the context of that now. But looking at it, it just doesn't seem like he was playing that as a Skrull, pretending to be Rhodey in the stuff that he's been in since Civil War. So, I mean, a fan, but not a fan.
Yeah, just like when Andy brought up the Winter Soldier thing with Nick Fury, like if it would have been known back then that they might do something later, if they would have put like a little, I don't know, a little marker there to say like this is possible, so that you could go back and when you watched it years later, you'd be like, oh, he was acting a little different there, or that did seem a little out of character. I don't think we're going to see things like that going back 100%. I think it was just a retcon right now. I think the guy who wrote this series decided that, and then like they look back
somebody
and went,
in the writer's room was like, bro, what if? And
and then they just decided. Go ahead.
I've seen people online saying, oh, well, the Skrulls are like, they're deep cover agents. Like if they were impersonating you, you wouldn't want to know. You wouldn't be able to know. But narratively, I would expect them to put something in.
Right. And then even in this series, he acts just enough off for you to wonder, and then you do start to realize like, oh, and then also I believe it's a female Skrull that is impersonating him. So you get different mannerisms that made it like, it's like if it's like this now, then we probably would have seen or noticed things in the past as well, that like little character traits that were like, oh, that's not really him. You can kind of see through the veil a little bit. Andy.
Oh, don't get me started on the whole how long has he been a Skrull situation for. It makes my blood boil even thinking about it. If this is a decision that he's been a Skrull since Civil War, that really pisses me off a little bit. Simply because the director obviously came out and said, "Oh, he's still in the hospital gown that he was in at the end of Civil War," and that's his hint that that's the timeline. At the end of the day, the director isn't the one that gets to say on how long Rhodey's been a Skrull. It's Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
He's the one that would have gone, if you want to retcon it, I'm going to retcon it, whatever. So to take away, again, all those emotional moments of Rhodey through Infinity War and Endgame and saying that was a Skrull instead, to me, that's a kick in the balls to us as consumers of the MCU, that they're taking that away from us. If they're using it as a plot device for, say, Armor Wars, where he's going to learn about all this stuff and have to deal with all that trauma and recovery, and potentially him leading to him giving up the War Machine sort of armor and the suit for good, I can maybe get on board with that a little bit. But it does take, again, as a viewer of the MCU, it takes away the emotional pain that we've gone through together with him in those moments. As for the portrayal of him being a Skrull in the series, I liked it in terms of the more this series went on, the more the Skrull playing Rhodey didn't care. The more they acted a bit like a dick. They're like, drinking. The president's like, have you been drinking? But when you're talking to me, and the more that they're putting themselves in there going, you need to do this, and the more impatient they seem to get with the people around them and the president and trying to force the sort of plan through that Gravik was putting through to them. So I liked the betrayal that the Skrull did as Rhodey, and it was just, as you said, just off enough that that something's up. And once we know that they're a Skrull, they're just going all out to go, doesn't matter anymore. I need to push through this agenda and get it done. So that side of it was good. Obviously, you couldn't have anyone too high profile being a Skrull, I think, for this TV series. So Rhodey was maybe a perfect one. They've risen up through the ranks, and they're a security advisor or secretary of defense. I'm not sure what position they were holding now. But yeah, overall, as long as they clear up this whole thing about how long he's been a Skrull for, and then I can deal with it personally and move on from it, that's okay. But yeah, the Skrull being Rhodey in this series, I think, still works quite well.
I mean, yeah, I love Don Cheadle as an actor anyway, so it was good that we had him there. And him, that gives him, that'd be an interesting role to play. You're War Machine, but you're a Skrull being like, that probably took a lot of preparation to, just navigate that. Yeah.
And he did so well too at portraying like feminine characteristics towards the end. Like the more kind of unhinged he became, the more the Skrull persona came through, and it didn't seem like Rhodey at all by the end. Like that's a testament to Don Cheadle's acting.
Yeah,
just like being able to portray a character inside of a character is pretty cool.
He played another superhero on Funny or Die. He's Captain Planet.
Yeah.
I forgot about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh God, that was hilarious.
All right. So moving on, what did you guys think of the introduction of the new character? Daenerys Targaryen coming over and portraying Gaia in this series. Like I hadn't really seen her in anything before or since Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys had, I don't know, but to see her going straight from that role to this role for me, I don't know, it's kind of cool. But like I like her as an actress. I think she's awesome. But I didn't even recognize her at first in this series because I'm used to seeing this, this Targaryen, right? And to have her come on here with dark hair and just it caught me off guard that it was even her. Like I don't think I realized till like the end of episode 1 that like, oh, I think that's so. Andy, what'd you think?
I loved Emilia Clarke in this, to be fair. I think the only thing I'd really seen her in over the last few years was when she played, was it Kira in the Solo Star Wars film? So I maybe was a bit more prepared for her with dark hair than you were. But yeah, I liked Gaia in this. Her motivations at first seemed a bit confused because she was obviously supporting Gravik's idea, or the idea of obviously her dad hadn't done what he'd said he was going to do with Fury, and she was on the side of like, look, we need to take some action and do something. But finding out that from her dad that Gravik had killed her mum sort of just swayed her back. So she was giving Talos and Fury information, but was still fulfilling her duties until it sort of was becoming more that obvious that to Gravik that she'd betrayed them. And before she fully came back over to the side, obviously her death was always going to be one of those things that it was never going to stick, and we were going to see her the next week, and it was just a case of how did she get out of it. Her having a full set of powers now, and this has been the big debate since the finale, isn't it? Is Gaia now the most powerful person in the MCU because she has everyone's powers?
Right.
Did
Every
anybody else
single
make
person
the
out there.
connection that she's kind of like Rogue now?
Like Rogue, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, she's as super powered as Rogue, if not more, because she has Captain Marvel's powers, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, to an extent, yeah, but yeah, I feel like she's ridiculously super powered, but that's, I feel like they kind of overdid it a little bit, but you know, whatever.
I feel like I already felt like Captain Marvel was a little overpowered. So yeah, to add not only her power but all of these other powers and abilities too to that is kind of nuts. What do you think, Amy, about the kind of Gaia's arc in this series?
Her arc, I mean, it's pretty compacted, you know, it's pretty like you're introduced to her and then she pretty much immediately starts to change as soon as she comes into contact with her father, and then she's betraying him, and then she's leaving. So I would say that didn't have quite as much detail and depth and room to breathe as I would have liked. I agree. I don't know what they're doing with this character that is incredibly superpowered. I don't know what the goal is of that. Like presumably she is the most powered if she's got everyone's powers. So that's kind of, I don't know, it's problematic to always have those super powered ones. The other thing from a visual standpoint in the fight with Gravik at the end. On the CGI, when Gravik would pop out like an arm from another character, it looked okay because he was already like scrolled out and he was big. When tiny Amelia Clark would suddenly grow like a Drax arm, it looks quite silly.
Yeah,
it was tough. Yeah, it was.
I was not a big fan of that fight in general, and just visually it looked a bit silly to me. But I am interested to see what they're going to do with her. I love that she's now paired with Olivia Colman's character, who I loved. We haven't talked about her yet, but she was just amazing in the show, and her character was so much fun and like so unhinged, and so I'm interested to see what they do with her and all those powers. But I wasn't 100% happy with the way her character developed on the show.
Yeah, I think she's a great character as she was, but with all the superpowers, I'm not sure I'm as big of a fan anymore. Well, I guess it depends on what they do with her. Like maybe they find a way to make it temporary or take those powers back or something to where she's a little more grounded. But
that's kind of what I was thinking. Like maybe those powers don't stick. Like take a COVID vaccine, it's some kid for a while, then you gotta get like a booster or something. Like
you got a Super Scroll booster.
Yeah.
How did Gravik figure out how to do that, but nobody else did, or thought maybe that was a possibility? You would think governments, they might have tried to do that themselves. I don't know.
You
think so? That he probably wanted to maintain that he was the most powerful scroll. That was my thought, is that he doesn't want to give this to everybody because then anybody can kind of, stand up to him. At that point, he's the most powerful, potentially the most powerful being on the planet, because he has access to all this backlog of superpowers, DNA that he's been, infusing himself with. So I feel like he's like, we're going to save this, and then I'll give some people some of the powers so they can be my soldiers and be leaps and bounds above everybody else, but still not more powerful than me. That kind of thing is what I was kind of reading into.
Yeah, but why was it Sword that's sort of the shield replacement?
I feel like that.
Why weren't they working on this if it's in the realm of possibility?
Yeah, right. Like, why didn't the government come up with that? It seems so obvious and easy for Gravik.
Very easy.
It's like, and
Built a machine. There was some lightning.
right. And that's the thing too. It was like, yeah, you kind of have to suspend some disbelief in here because it's like they just develop a machine to where you can combine that with the DNA, just the DNA of these other characters and get their powers. For one, Drax is not powered. He's just
That's just
a
his
little being.
species, right? And he's just a badass.
Yeah, that's who he is. Why would she be able to grow a Drax? I don't know. Some of the stuff like I don't know.
Maybe it has something to do with their their scroll DNA where they can shapeshift. Maybe it lends itself to them being able to be like, all right, boom, this is a Drax arm now. Because it kind of melds with their shapeshifting abilities. I'm really helping these writers out and really kind of lifting them up right now.
No.
Just to play devil's advocate.
I definitely think though that is part of it, is like because of their shape-shifting ability is why this works for them. And I don't think it works like, say, I don't think this would work for, say, like if you did the same thing to a human. I don't think it works. I don't think Nick Fury goes in there, injects some DNA and gets in that machine, and now he can just change at will into different power sets.
I think that maybe this is me reaching, but I think that's kind of like how they did Captain America. Like they got the super soldier serum and then they put him in the machine and now he's super strong. So they had like, okay, well, we're going to do this, but this is for Skrulls, and we're going to take this person's superpower and put it in our super soldier serum. And this is how we do it for Skrulls now.
Yeah. It definitely has some crazy implications. Like if you did have several of these Skrulls who could shapeshift into different whatever power set they wanted to use, that would be like a formidable opponent for anyone.
Yeah.
And that was the goal, right? It was like they were doing this because they knew it. If they carried out their plan, they were going to have to face some powered people. Like they were going to end up having to face the Avengers at some point. So it makes sense. I don't know though, with this tech still being out there, it's like they could revisit this at some point, or when the mutants show up, it's like even more powers and abilities to be used in this.
And so Sonya has Gia now, right? And they're kind of riding together.
Gaia, yeah.
Sorry.
No. So yeah, I think Sonya in the end takes Gaia under her wing. I don't know what they're doing. Like at first I was thinking maybe she had something to do with the Thunderbolts, but then I was like, no, because they got Val as the kind of like procurer. Yeah. So I don't know what they're up to. I have no idea. But interesting, and I wonder where they'll pop up. Like I hope that the Marvels film is not just full of Skrull stuff, because we've had enough of that for right now. I feel like the whole first movie was about Skrulls and the Kree. Then you got this whole series about the Skrulls. So I'm hoping the Marvels kind of does something else outside of the realm of that. But I'm wondering, where else do they pop up? Where else do they become important? Storyline wise. So
right.
Who knows where they're gonna be? But that brings up Sonya. Jesse, what'd you think of this kind of devilish?
What's James Bond's government asset that he goes to? The 6? Is that right?
MI6.
Yeah, MI6, but M. Yeah. What it was like that was who I was kind of like, oh, we got like this M character, that she's super ingrained. She's like kind of a British counterpart to Nick Fury. They're familiar. They're deep in the spy network. We haven't heard of her before, so that lends to her credibility, actually, as her being a spy, because we haven't. She's brand new to us, but she's not a spring chicken. So it's like, oh, she's been in here for a minute doing things over here overseas. So I was excited about her. I liked her, and I liked her level of being able to read people, and she was just picking out who was a Skrull and who wasn't, kind of ousting people. And you knew that she had a ulterior motive from the very beginning when she was like, no, I want to work with you to figure this out with one of them, and they don't want to comply. So it showed how harsh she could be in killing that guy right off the bat. And
Yeah.
I liked her. I think the acting was great. The character development came on quick, so you didn't really have to like read through a lot. I mean, it's not a super, super deep character as of yet, but you know, it lends herself that she's gonna be ongoing moving forward with Gaia.
Yeah, Andy. Val
Sonya.
or Sonia?
Well, I definitely prefer Sonya. She was my surprise love of this series in terms of the character herself. She was this happy-go-lucky, ruthless character, and I loved every minute that she was on screen. I really do hope that they're going to bring her back to do some stuff in the future. Thunderbolts was my pick, where we would potentially see her next, simply because of some of her actions in this and the ending with Gaia, because she was obviously really interested in getting hold of the female scroll scientist that basically developed this machine, and she had all the blueprints for it. So looks like she was really interested in this. And bearing in mind that the Thunderbolts, the rumored sort of villain, so to speak, is going to be potentially Sentry, which is like Marvel's answer to Superman in a way, and maybe Sonya is the one that is experimenting with the machine that creates someone that has loads of mixed abilities again, and ends up becoming a villain that the Thunderbolts then have to be put together by Val to sort of combat. That was where I was thinking that could possibly happen. So, but yeah, my love for Sonya is immense. To be fair, I love this character. Olivia Colman obviously had a lot of fun with it, and can't wait to see what they do with her in the future.
The MCU likes to change things up on us, you know, like taking stuff from the comics and then bringing them in here and doing gender swaps and doing race swaps, and it's kind of really throwing us off so we don't expect what's coming. What if Gaia is Sentry?
Interesting.
Right? They've already got
Yeah.
this like super powered. We were just talking about how overpowered she is. Like,
I mean, yeah, it's an interesting theory because they need to do something with her now in terms of, you know, her power set. My particular little theory was that she was going to get depowered by Kang in either Kang Dynasty or in the events of Secret Wars that follow, to make sure she's not this completely overpowered person that otherwise they don't really know what to do with her if she's going to be that powerful. So Kang makes a statement by depowering her and shows his power. But there's nothing that says that, you know, yeah, that she couldn't be part of the Thunderbolts film, and they're the ones that are sent to stop her, and it's Sonya and Gaia versus Val and the Thunderbolts. That's, yeah, I like that. I'd be down for that, to be fair.
You gotta love Val. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is so fire. She's so awesome. Anyway, sorry.
Amy, I know you love this character.
Yeah, I mean, I love Olivia Colman, her like cheerful homicidality, just like here to like kill people and get information, and she does it with such aplomb. It was, yeah, she was fantastic, and I really hope that I assume that she'll pop up other places. Yeah, I couldn't see her and Val working together. I don't think neither of them strike me as someone who plays well with others, especially someone who would sort of be perceived as like a direct competition. So yeah, we'll see where they pop up.
Yeah, I feel like both of those characters feel like characters that would need to be in control, like very control-driven characters who want to run things. Boss ladies, right? Like, 100%. So, yeah, interesting. I had not heard about Sentry being the villain for the Thunderbolts, and that's interesting. It brings up a whole new like set of thoughts in my head. So we'll see what happens. It's getting dark here. See that? See how dark it's getting here? So what do we got left? Gravik, the villain of the series. Let's start with Amy. Amy, what did you think about Gravik as a villain? And then just about like how they played out his arc in the series and how it wrapped up. I think you kind of alluded to it earlier a little bit about how they didn't have the Nick Fury and him resolution. But overall, what do you think of Gravik as a character?
I liked him as a character, and I liked him as, you know, someone who feels very personally betrayed by Fury. Like, it was clear through the whole thing that this was a very sense of very personal betrayal for not having that for Fury not finding them a new home. I also thought the actor did a very good job with it. I thought he played the character well. One of my favorite scenes in the show was when he and Talos were in I think a museum cafe, and they were having that exchange. Thought he played that really well, and I thought he played off Ben Mendelsohn, Talos really well. That also, when everybody in the cafe turns into him, is like one of the strongest scenes in the show to me. I would have liked them to do, like I said, for actually a lot of the characters, I would have liked them to do a little bit more with him, give a little more depth, give a little more room to breathe, as well as having that final meeting with Fury. A little bit more, but I liked what he did with the character.
Has everyone seen the Barbie movie? No, Jesse, you haven't seen the Barbie.
Yeah.
Has anyone seen the Barbie movie?
Yeah, I saw it.
This guy's in that, right?
Yeah.
Isn't he Ken?
Yeah, he's one of the Kens.
He is one of the Kens. I did make a joke that the reason they like Beto and some of the other guys attacked him in the cafe was because they'd seen him in Barbie the week before and went, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Barbie was an interesting movie. It had a lot of like faces I recognized in it, like in roles that would have been like more background roles in another movie. They actually had a lot of recognizable actors in them, even if they didn't have a lot of lines. It was interesting in that way. Not to go completely off topic.
Yeah, no, that was interesting. I noticed that too. Like, it's that guy. It's like, it's her. And then, but you don't get anything like they're not. It's not a starring role. They're just kind of there. They're just part of the group. So, Andy, Jesse, who wants to go first? What do we think about Gravik as a character overall?
I like it. Something that I like him, but I feel like they could have done more. And he made him really hateable. Like after he started getting like the superpower stuff, and then he started like beating on his own people. It's kind of like, it's like you can almost support you can almost feel he's justified in his actions until he starts like whipping on his own people. Like once he gets superpowered, you're like, fuck this guy, dude. He's a turd. Because like he has a cause, he has a purpose, he has a reason. He's going for it because he's trying to, get a place for his people, that was promised to him and it didn't come. So he's trying to take it. You can kind of understand the uprising there. But then he starts like attacking his own people and threatening his own people. It's like, all right, this guy's trash. So it made it easy to identify with people want to kill him after, especially for me after he smashed out all his like soldiers and stuff. I was like, I don't know. I lost any heartstrings that were tied to with him at that point. I was like, all right. I mean, obviously, like him doing all these terrorist missions, you're like, all right, this guy's kind of fucked up. But
I was kind of glad that they finally made a, because they just, as much as I love them doing like deep character work and making villains kind of in that gray area where like you can relate to them and they're not just the mustache twirling villain. Like I like that, but I feel like every once in a while you got to have a mustache twirling villain, just every once in a while, just have a bad guy that everybody hates. And I feel like they did good with this one because it was like they gave him that motivation that made sense. But as Jesse said, they made him hateable. Like you did not, you're okay with them killing him off. Go ahead, kill him off. He's like an evil bastard. So, like, we got to get rid of him.
AJ Hill in the first episode. Come on, fuck that guy. Gotta die.
Yeah, I think they did good with that. Like they gave him good motivation, but they still made him like an asshat. You wanted to get rid of this guy. So, I was glad that they didn't just make this morally gray character that you felt bad when they defeated him. Like I'm glad, or that they didn't come to some resolution where they like changed his mind about things or like got him to see the light. Like no, they just he'd gone too far and he had to go. Andy, Gravik.
Yeah, I did like this guy overall. I'm well known for liking my bad guys and my anti-heroes, to be fair. I'm glad they didn't make him, like, as you said, sort of an anti-hero or someone you can relate to in the sort of grey area. Um, I I think it was quite well written that the more the series went on, the more his motivations almost turned a bit more selfish. He still wanted to find a home for the Skrulls and destroy the humans, but it became more about his personal vendetta against Fury and more about him getting the Super Skrull powers for himself
Hmm.
because he wanted to be the one that was at the top of the tree and no one could challenge him completely. Um, but yeah, I liked him. I like the actor that played him and thought he did a really really good job. Um, I I kind of for most of the series I was like this dude has to die at the end. Like there's no redeeming him. Like, you don't need to be redeemed, and he has to be killed. But I think the way that the finale went for him in terms of he thinks he's talking to Fury and he's pouring his heart out. We get the story of why he looks how he does. It's the first guy that Fury sent him to kill, and he
Yeah.
adopted this guy's face and stuff. And he's pouring his heart out, and then he doesn't even get to do that to Fury in the end because it's Gaia in disguise.
Yeah.
And Guy was always going to be the one to take him down simply because he killed both of her parents, and she was the one that was the only powerful enough one there to do it. But I still think that was a bit of a letdown for it. I thought the fight at the end, as cheesy CGI as it wasn't a good enough fight for him and the powers that they had to really do it. I mean, what happened to the whole thing that extremists can heal pretty much anything? We've seen people have parts blown off them, and he had a chunk missing out of his face 2 episodes before, and it got healed. So
Yeah.
I thought I was expecting a bit more for him at the end. I thought he was maybe in that final battle done a little bit dirty, but at the end of the day, I thought this was a good villain for the series. He did a really good job portraying him, and he gave the gravitas that was needed to, as he said, a mustache twirling villain who just wanted to be villainous and do bad things by the end of it, because he went a little bit mad with his idea of revenge and just, I'm going to be a badass with all these powers and no one's going to stop me sort of attitude.
I like
Yeah.
that you kind of illustrated it well, where it's kind of a poetic justice where he's not getting that catharsis that he thought he was getting with Nick Fury, as kind of the same hand that he had dealt to Agent Hill, thinking that Nick Fury had killed her. So that is pretty cool.
Yeah, the more you guys talk about this finale, the more disappointed I am with the not getting that resolution with Fury, because yeah, even that final scene there, like that should have been Fury hearing all that from Gravik. Like we got robbed of that, like the emotional weight of that hitting Fury in the end in that final battle with him, laying out that like, this is the first guy you sent me to kill, and like I feel like that could have been so
But
much heavy in Fury's
But
head.
it gives Gaia that knowledge to move forward, feeling, without as much guilt, knowing that that's the kind of shit that her people went through, and that she had to do all this shit to get through it. So I feel like that's just kind of ammo for her clip to go be pissed off, and she's gonna have to get talked down from that. And also, I feel like that would have been lost on Nick Fury. He's like, I fucking know, dude. I left my wife to go to space, trying to figure it out. I get it. Fuck,
I was there. I remember. Yes.
Quit fucking nagging me, you fucking shit.
Yes. Cool. I think we've gotten through, unless you guys can think of a character that you wanted to talk about that I've forgotten. Is there any character?
There was that one dude that was like Gaia's friend, and I don't really have anything. This is my whole thing with that guy. He's an African American fellow, and just nothing happened with him that I can really remember.
So
like,
the guy that they introduced basically in the beginning, he was like the new kind of recruit to the rebels, right?
I was like,
yeah.
Did he have like some? I was like, was there like some? Well, I know that Gravik killed him later. That's one of the people that he killed. But it's like, was that the whole story arc for him to come be recruited and get killed by Gravik? Was that the whole reason for this character? I feel like he could have done without that bit.
He got given a lot of high-profile missions very quickly as well. Like, because he turned up at the start, they're introducing him to the whole thing. We've got clothes here, we've got Skrull plants and food, and all of a sudden he's being sent off to like raid houses and take over nuclear submarines. It's like that was a quick introduction for this guy. Went up quickly. It's
right. Damn.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
I feel like maybe I don't know why. I mean, it's kind of disappointing that he was like a bit of a red herring for the audience. It was just like because they built it up like he was maybe going to be the one that they tested this machine on. Maybe they were going to, he was going to be the guinea pig or something. I thought they were building him up to be the Super Skrull. When they decided to go through with it, and then they just take him out. It's kind of I don't know, a little lackluster. I was kind of hoping that they would do something more with him with all that buildup, but whatever. Yeah, I think it was just a red herring for us to be like following this guy, and then one more death that you didn't expect.
Fair enough.
All right. With all the characters being discussed, what I'd like to get from you guys is kind of like what you thought of the series overall. Kind of a final thoughts on it after that finale, and then also just where are you at in terms of how you see the MCU right now as a whole? Like, are you as excited as you used to be? Are you not really excited at all? I know there's a lot of people in both of those camps, so I want to hear what you guys think. And let's start with Amy. How are you feeling about this series and about the MCU?
I think for this series, there were things that I liked about it. There were characters that I liked. I thought there were some really strong performances in this series, particularly like Talos, Fury, Bravik, and Sonya. I think were the ones that stuck out to me. But overall, I was disappointed in the series. I thought the writing was a little bit lackluster. I thought they didn't kind of live up to our expectations of this series. There's a couple of plot holes that I've been looking at people's reactions to the show, and some of the plot holes that people brought up. I just like, oh yeah, that's a big strange thing. Like one of them, which I don't know if you guys will feel this is as big a plot hole as I do, is so Nick Fury leaves Talos' body in that field or wherever they were, and like nobody goes and picks up the alien body. Like the government doesn't come in and get the alien body so that Gaia can come back and get it like the next day. That seemed a little unlikely.
Yeah,
governments are not usually one for letting aliens just hang out.
No.
That those go to Area 51. So that kind of thing left me a little bit disappointed. But again, there were some very strong performances. In terms of the current state of the MCU, I have to say I am a couple movies behind. So I don't have the best sense of where the current movies are. And it is tough when you have these transition periods between sort of an older guard to a new guard. It's a tricky point for fiction, whether it's a book series or movies, TV show, whatever. When you're losing some of your older characters and bringing in a lot of new characters, that's a tough transition point. And I am nervous to see what my interest is going to be in some of the newer projects that maybe don't feature some of my favorite older characters. But I mean, I'm still interested. Definitely some of the more recent shows I really loved. I really loved She-Hulk. I really loved Moon Knight. So I'm excited to see if those characters pop up in other places. But I'm nervously seeing where MCU is going to go at this point. That's probably where I'm at.
Yeah. Andy, do you feel like Amy? Is this just we're getting a new doctor, and so you just kind of got to transition and get used to it? What are you thinking about not only this series but the MCU as a whole?
So for this series, I did enjoy it overall. I think if I classed it as episodes 1 to 5, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. And the finale does diminish my overall score because I didn't really enjoy the finale overall. But like Amy, Gravik, Fury, Talos, Sonya were the high points of this for sure. They all gave really good performances in terms of the actors themselves. The writing could have been a little bit better, and it has left us with some questions that do need to be answered. Like I think with any project now, they set things up for down the road still. So there are things that are going to be answered that we didn't get here, but I think as fans, sometimes we want the answer straight away, and it does leave you a bit empty sometimes when you don't get them. But as a series overall, yeah, I did really enjoy it. I'm happy that we've got it, and I'm interested to see where some of these characters do pop up down the road. For the MCU as a whole, as I said at the start, I'm excited by almost every project that comes around because I'm just happy that we're getting projects. I think anyone that expected the MCU to still be reaching the highs post Endgame was maybe being a little bit unrealistic. Any long-going TV series, you will always see that the quality probably after a while starts going up and down because the writers go through phases of being able to do really good stuff and then doing average or bad stuff. So it's no surprise maybe post Endgame the MCU's had a dip in quality at different points. But I think building up to Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, the fact that the Fantastic Four are coming in, which we've been waiting so long for, and I know you guys are going to be hyped about, obviously the X-Men are going to be following that as well. I think we're going to build up to another high. I'm really excited to see where they do go with it. I don't think my love for it and my excitement for it is going to go down. I'm excited for each project that comes along, and for me, I'm not one of the ones that feels lackluster about it right now. Yep, I'm going to like things more than others. I think personal preference is always a key thing in that anyway, isn't it? So for me, I'm excited about the future and where they come to at the end of Phase 6. And then if they can maintain a good level after that still, then they're doing something that no movie franchise has ever done, which is going beyond, okay, they're already doing something they haven't done with over 20 odd films or whatever. They're maintaining an intertwined universe that's still mixing and carrying on and crossing over from old characters to newer characters, something they're still going to have to do with the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and any others they decide to bring in after that as well. So I'm still excited for the future of the MCU. I think they're still going to be killing it. I don't think the fatigue's going to be a long-term thing. I think it's going to go up and down. I think other franchises will suffer more than the MCU, but I'm going to be here for it all the way.
That's exactly what I want to hear, Andy. Thank you. That's this is why you're the greatest podcaster in the history of the world. No, but I'm always talking about, like, on this podcast, like, man, we got to keep the hope alive because it's gonna pick back up. It's gonna build back up into some big crescendo. It's, just like keep the faith. I know it's a little weird right now, but everything is when it transitions. Like, it's weird for a little bit, and then when we build back up. But yeah, and another thing is that one thing I've noticed about the MCU is that a lot of times stuff that comes later will improve the stuff from before. So you'll see something that happens, like a big event like Endgame, and then you have a new appreciation for some of the movies that they featured in Endgame, right? Like maybe Thor: The Dark World, maybe it went up a notch for you after you saw that it mattered in Endgame. When you make characters matter a lot more, and then you go back and you watch the old films about them, it's sometimes it improves them. Sometimes it makes it like when you make that character or that movie matter to the current story, you kind of get a new appreciation for it. So who knows, some of this stuff that we're not so hot on right now, we might have a new appreciation for later when they make them matter.
Yeah, so absolutely. And I think people, what they forget about a lot of Phase 4 things as well is that this has happened during COVID and lockdowns, and they had to film a lot of things in a close schedule, so they weren't able to necessarily write the stories to intertwine as much as they had done previously and to cross over. So people saying about Eternals and the big Eternals statue that's sticking out the sea, why has that never been mentioned before? Because they didn't have a chance to write it into other stuff because it was all being filmed in private at the same time. So I think the more we're going to get to films and series now, the more they're going to go back to being connected and intertwined like they were before, and that's going to improve the viewing process for us.
Yeah,
and I mean,
eventually. Go ahead.
That's also dependent on how this writer strike rolls out.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I remember the writer strike. Oh, it was in the 2000s.
2009, I think.
Yeah, and some shows it just ruined. Like I guess they kept writing them just with the non-unionized writers, and some of them just didn't work out. Didn't work out. So
one of my favorite series, man, Heroes was.
Oh,
yeah, that's what I thought.
Literally what I was thinking about. Yeah, ruined.
It was severely affected. Like they cut a season in half, and like they made what should have been 24 episodes into 12. And it was like, what is this? Like they rushed everything and just crunched it into 12 episodes. And it was not the same after that. It was like, they tried to recoup it the next season. And it was just like, you had the fan base who was so crazy about that series, because it was like a wild hit. They just all fell away after that, with that third season, and never regrouped. So Jesse Koll, I'm going to give you the last word on Secret Invasion and the MCU.
Secret Invasion kind of actually got me like reinterested, because I loved Multiverse of Madness, and then after that I did not get on board with Love and Thunder, and I'm a huge Thor fan. I love the whole franchise. Up until that movie was kind of like, then they did that Miss Marvel, and that wasn't really for me. I didn't enjoy that. And then I watched Quantumania, which I did like, but it wasn't like, oh my God, I was expecting another Multiverse of Madness and Quantumania, and I was left feeling a little shorter on that. But then I watched this, and I kind of slept on Guardians of the Galaxy, and then I watched that, and I'm like, okay, we're back, baby. We're back after Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Secret Invasion. So pretty pumped, man. I'm into it. And then we got Loki coming up. That's going to be amazing.
Yeah, Loki.
So looking forward to that.
Yeah. I mean, so I feel like, we're back. We're, we found our groove, babe. Let's go. Yeah. So I'm excited for everything they're doing right now. I'm sure I'm not super pumped for the Marvels, but I'll probably watch it. But, they're doing so much now that it's like you can't love every single thing they put out, because it's not everything is for you. Some of it is, some of it's not, and you have to take the good with the bad, And I mean, so many Marvel movies now. It's not like we got Thor, now there's Iron Man, who are these well-established, iconic, Captain America. We don't got these 100 or 60-year-old characters now that everybody's privy to. We got stuff that you don't know about, and you don't know if you're gonna like it. You don't know. They don't have this childhood development with it that you saw on TV when you were a kid. You have to assess: do I like this character? Is it something that's gonna be for me? And if it's not, then you can't base your interpretation off something as when you're a child. You have to take it as an adult. Do I like this or not? Is this for me? Is this named at me? I don't know. So you can't love your childhood heroes if they weren't childhood heroes, so you have to take things as adult, have an adult opinion of it. You have to be a mature viewer, because Miss Marvel probably wasn't aimed at Jesse Koll. It was probably aimed at girls trying to find themselves and express themselves as blossoming women, and give them a sense of empowerment. But for me, I'm like, all right, well, I'm not really relating to this little girl's journey, but I'm not a little girl, so that makes sense. Right?
Yeah, it makes sense. And also, I think there's something to be said about that with a lot of these characters. To a lot of us, the reason we loved what has come before so much is because they were ingrained into our childhood or our teen years or something earlier in life, whether it be comic books, cartoons, whatever. You have a relationship in your brain with that character or with that team, Avengers, X-Men, what have you. And then now you're getting characters that maybe you hadn't ever seen before. And so you don't already have this ingrained love for it. And so, I mean, who knows? Who knows how much you would love Captain America if you were just now discovering him for the first time. Maybe you wouldn't love him as much because you're grown up, and that's not when you encountered the character for the first time. It wasn't written for you, right? So there's something to be said for that too. So some of these characters like Ms. Marvel, and just characters maybe you didn't interact with. She-Hulk. So a lot of people didn't read She-Hulk. So it might be your first time encountering that person. Eternals, what have you? Like these things, a lot of them have been around for a long time, but they weren't super mainstream teams or characters that people interacted with. So you're coming into it for the first time. You're like, oh, I don't know if I like that. I don't know if so there is something to be said for that, for sure. Yeah, I think we discussed the hell out of this show. I think we did pretty damn good. So thank you guys so much for doing this. Andy, thank you for staying so late with your greenish blue hue over there.
So good, bro.
What I'd like to do now is just kind of let you guys say where people can find you, and then we'll wrap it up. So, Andy, I'll let you go first. Where can people find you and your podcast online?
I mean, thank you for having me on, man. It's a pleasure. You know how much I love you and your show, so thank you very much for having me on for this roundtable. Everyone, you can find the Galactic Koll podcast. That's the name of my show. You can find us Instagram, TikTok. I'm on Twitch. I try and game a little bit on there as well. Facebook and YouTube. I'm finally getting sorted out as well after a bit of hassle with them. But yeah, hit us up on there. I discuss Star Wars, Marvel, DC, anything nerdy and geeky that I'd love to discuss. Really, that's what I cover on there. So come find me. Give us a listen.
All right. And Amy, where can people find you online if they want to, or do you want them to? Maybe you don't want them
to. Well, I don't really talk too much about geeky stuff online, which maybe I should. But if you want to see me get mad about stuff, I do have a Twitter. It's Amy_Vigilante, where I get mad about the state of the world. And I also have an Instagram because I read quite prolifically. I do have an Instagram that I don't update enough, but if anybody wants to follow me there, it's at Gnome Rumblings Reads. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Cool. And Jesse, I know where to find you. I know where to
Okay. You can find me on Instagram at Koll_Widda_K. And you can find me on everywhere you find your podcast with this fine human Brett Scott. We do a weekly show, Long Lost Brothers. We've been at it a few years now, and we talk about everything, man. Comics, fitness, to all kinds of shit. Just come check us out. You'll enjoy it. If you don't, it's a good hang. We have fun. Yeah, we push each other. So it's a podcast devoted to talking shit and self-improvement, I think, is our intro. So.
Yep, talking shit and self-improvement. That's right. All right. Thank you guys again so much for doing this, and I'll talk to you all again soon. I can't wait for Loki season 2. It's gonna be fun. Thank you guys for being here. Take it easy.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Bye, everyone.